بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما رب العالمين. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. أما بعد. So I realized that we are studying this hadith at the backdrop of everything that is happening in the world today, and it might seem like a disconnect for some of us, focusing on this while momentous events are taking place elsewhere. But I want to emphasize that if you consider what you're doing a form of jihad, really, that brings you closer to Allah Azza wa Jal, then you would be investing your time wisely, because this learning is jihad. And in particular, what we are learning today is really very relevant to what is happening in the world today. And I will make that explicit at the end. You may be able to see it as we explain it, but I will make it, inshallah, very explicit at the end if Allah Azza wa Jal allows us to. And you'll see the connection between these two. So the hadith tells us that a man comes to the Prophet ﷺ once and he asks him this really beautiful, important question. He says, دُلَّنِي عَلَى عَمَلٍ إِذَا أَنَا عَمَلْتُهُ أَحَبَّنِي اللَّهُ وَأَحَبَّنِي النَّاسِ. دُلَّنِي عَلَى عَمَلٍ. He says, guide me to a thing, an action, that if I were to do, Allah would love me and people would love me. So he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, izhad fi dunya yuhibbuka Allah, wazhad fima aydi nas yuhibbuka nas. He said, alayhi salatu wassalam, abstain, have zuhd, abstain from the world, have zuhd in the world, and Allah will love you. And abstain from people's possession, what they own, and people will love you. A very simple statement from the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, yet it is so profound because it unlocks Allah's love and people's love. And they're both related because they are both about the dunya. Stay away from this and you will get love. Allah's love and people's love. Now, as this hadith is telling us that our problem is the dunya. This world is our problem. It is the center of our existence, the center of our life. Everything that we think about, everything that we seek, this is how we define ourselves and this is how we define others. We are worthwhile if we have it, and we are worth nothing if we don't have it. If you look at how the world evaluates countries, cities, people, what are the best countries in the world if they're going to rank them? They'll be based on what? It has to be economics and how much money you make. They will not rank cities morally and ethically because it doesn't matter. Because some of the best cities will fail if they are ranked like that. And plus, there is no moral standard that they could refer to, which says a lot, by the way. There is no moral standard that is agreed that the world can look at and they say this is morality and this is not. A lot of leading cities and countries, they will fail if we really were to apply morality and ethics. So how do they rank them? Economics. How do you rank the success of a person? Economics. It's status. It is position. It is career. It is these things. What are these? All of it is dunya. So all of us, most of us, many of us are obsessed with the dunya and focused on it. And loving the dunya really then dominates our hearts, our thinking, our minds, our life. This is what we live for. This is what we die for. This is what gives us meaning. So instead of being truly slaves of Allah Azza wa Jal, in reality, I'm talking about things that we claim for ourselves, but in reality, instead of being slaves of Allah Azza wa Jal, we had become slaves of the dunya. We can't wait to consume, we can't wait to eat, we can't wait to travel. These are the things that define success and fun and happiness. This is what a marriage looks like to a lot of us. Not about sacrifice, but about having fun. So everything has, in a sense, been dominated and really polluted, but by the dunya. Now, as the hadith will imply and we will emphasize, loving Allah Azza wa Jal and loving the world, they're at odds with each other. And having love in the world and loving the dunya, they're at odds with each other. They cannot be reconciled easily. So it's hard for them to coexist. And if they were to coexist, they have to coexist with one on top and the other supplementary. But they cannot both be supreme. The world as it is today, the love of the world has to be supreme. And we're saying in religion, the love of Allah has to be supreme. You can't have both at the same time. One of them has to be supreme and the other not. So there are different types of love. And some of these types of love complement each other. And some types of love, they contradict each other. The dunya and the akhirah, they can't coexist as supreme loves. Allah Azza wa Jal says in the Quran, He says, تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا. You want the transient enjoyment and goods of this life. This is what you want. وَاللَّهُ يُرِيدُ الْآخِرَةِ. But Allah wants the hereafter. That is, He faults them, alayhi subhanahu wa ta'ala, for that desire. تُرِيدُونَ عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا. Things that do not last in the dunya. This is what you are seeking. That's what moves you. But Allah wants something else for you and from you, which is that He wants the akhirah. Why is that? It's because when you love the dunya, you're glued to it, right? Like anything else. You love it, you want to be right next to it. So if that's the case, how would you ever leave it if that's the thing that matters most to you? So if what matters most, I want to have fun, I want to eat out, I want to buy the most expensive brands, I want to travel, I want a big house, I want to pretend to be somebody of worth based on what I have. That's what matters. Then Allah tells you to sacrifice for His sake, meaning leave the dunya for His sake. How could you ever do this if the dunya is dominant in our hearts? Then we would sacrifice Allah instead of the dunya. It's all based on love. So Allah Azza wa Jal here in the Quran, and He's addressing the believers, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu. This is on page 181 to 182. ما لكم إذا قيل لكم انفروا في سبيل الله ثاقلتم إلى الأرض. It says, what is with you when you are told to set forth in the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal? You cling to earth. You get stuck to it. إِثَّاقَلْتُم, meaning you are so heavy that you can't be moved. Then He says, أَرَضِيتُم بِالْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا مِنَ الْآخِرَةِ. Are you satisfied with the worldly life instead of the hereafter? فَمَا مَتَاعُ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا فِي الْآخِرَةِ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ. The enjoyment of this life in the hereafter is almost nothing. Is very little. This is what is called mata'. And I think we've explained what mata' is before. Mata' is what you carry in one hand as you travel just to sustain you. Just one single hand. So that's the mata'. So He's saying, if Allah tells you to do something and you cling to this earth and you don't move, meaning in this particular ayah jihad, and you say, no, I'm not going to do it, but it doesn't only have to be this. Allah tells you salah, but you say, I'm too busy. Tells you zakah, you say, I love money too much to give it up. It tells you hajj, no, it's too difficult. Fasting, fasting, too tiring, too exhausting, too inconvenient. So the more that you love this life, the less that you will listen to Allah Azza wa Jal. And if you want to listen to Allah, you have to love this life less. And that's the equation that the Prophet ﷺ, was talking about in the hadith, and we will explain it further. So you have to always make a choice. And that choice at times will come with a cost. And you should not be afraid to pay that cost. So in the hadith here on page 182, he said, alayhi salatu wassalam, Man ahabba dunyahu adarra bi akhiratihi. وَمَنْ أَحَبَّ آخِرَتَهُ أَضَرَّ بِدُنْيَاهُ فَآثِرُ مَا يَبْقَى عَلَى مَا يَفْنَى. He says, if you love your dunya, you will hurt your hereafter. And if you love your hereafter, you will hurt your dunya. So favor what lasts over what perishes. I mean, you can't run away from this. And you always have to make a choice. So if you love the dunya, your dunya, you'll hurt your hereafter. You'll have less of the hereafter. Right? So if you don't want to give sadaqah and you want to keep your money to yourself, you'll have less of that in the hereafter. You don't want to pray on time because you're busy playing games or talking to your friends or whatever, and you miss the salah, you favored the dunya, so that's its love, you got less in the hereafter. You say to yourself, I want to gather as much money as I can, even if it takes me away from salah and Quran and dhikr and. You've got less from the akhirah because you wanted more from the dunya. So you want that great success in the dunya, you have to lose on the akhirah. طيب, if you favor the akhirah, will you lose some of the dunya? Yes or no? Yeah, you will lose some of the dunya. You're not going to have as much money. It doesn't mean that you'll be poor. That's not what he's saying, alayhi salatu wassalam. But you may not be as rich. Because you don't want to be as busy. Because you know what happens when you have a lot of money? Imagine that you have a lot of property, a lot of money. What does that require from you? Attention. So you have to spend a lot of time taking care of it, and a lot of time worrying about it, and a lot of time growing it. And as you open one door of the dunya, it opens 10 more doors for you. So that means that you're not going to have time for Allah Azza wa Jal. A person may say, well, does that mean that I have to be poor? Does that mean that I have to be sitting in the masjid all the time? And so no, there's always a balance. You get what you need from the dunya, but once you do, and this is what we're going to talk about when we talk about zuhd, but once you get from what you need from it, فَإِذَا فَرَغْتَ, what do? فَانْصَبْ. When you free yourself of the dunya, you got what you need from it, then you stand and you pray to Allah Azza wa Jal, meaning you make time for this. But the time that you give to Allah is going to take away from the dunya. Otherwise, you could spend it making more money, right? But no, you said, I'll give this to Allah Azza wa Jal. So it means that you're going to have less of the dunya. And because also when you favor the akhirah instead of the dunya, it means that you're not going to lie. You're not going to cheat. You're not going to exaggerate. You're not going to seek fame for fame's sake. Right? So all that is going to decrease the possibilities in the dunya, because those who want more of it have to lie, have to exaggerate, have to cheat, have to be crooked. So if you say, I'm not going to be crooked for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal, you're going to get less of the dunya. But that should be fine for us, because we're doing this for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So that's why he says, alayhi salatu wassalam, yeah, you're going to have less of the dunya. But what should comfort you is that you have more of the akhirah. So let what is lasting, everlasting, compensate you, right? And satisfy you, because everything else in the dunya will perish, right? If you have fame, if you have money, if you're up, you have to fall, because that's the cycle. No one is ever always loved and liked based on the dunya. They like you and they throw you down. You get money and then you lose it. You get money and you become anxious and depressed and hated because of it. You're not going to get everything that you want from the dunya, even if you put all of your effort in it. So that's why it is very problematic when you live for and you only seek the dunya. And another reason why loving this world is also a problem. So we said it's opposite of the hereafter. Another reason that it is a problem is that behind all sins is basically love of the dunya. If you were to able to remove that love, many or all of these things will disappear. So Malik ibn Dinar accurately said, حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلِّ خَطِيئَةٍ. He said, loving the world is the root cause of all sin. And is very beneficial when you encounter these types of statements that kind of condense many ideas into one, to remember it. Because it helps you later on when you forget, or when you're talking to someone, or you're talking to yourself. Oh, I know where this comes from. حُبُّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلِّ خَطِيئَةٍ. Loving the world is the root cause of all evil. There are parts of the dunya that you're permitted to love. It's natural to love. So here when we talk about zuhd, we'll say zuhd does not mean you have to hate the dunya. No. So you love your children, you love some good food, natural, some good drinks, got beautiful scenery. There are things in the dunya that are natural, that Allah had made beautiful, and loving them is permissible, recommended even. But that's not what we're talking about. What are we talking about when he said it's the root cause of all evil? It says or all sin, it says when you go at the background of all the sins that we commit them because we love the dunya. Why are we proud? Why are we arrogant? Because we want people's praise and admiration. We want them to say that we are better. We want to feel that. And it's all rooted in the dunya. Why do people steal? You love the dunya. Why do people gossip and backbite? Over the dunya. Because I want to be better than him. Even if it is under the guise of religion, but you're actually backbiting, you want to put him down because you want to be better. Why is it people kill each other? Why all the sins, look at them, why do people live them? It says because we love the dunya and we want to have more of it than other people, that's why we do this. If you take the love of the dunya, you take out competition, you take out sin, many of the sins that people commit will disappear. And so what the Prophet ﷺ recommended in the hadith and the word that he used as zuhd, and that is in the sunnah, so it should be used. He said, izhad. And the best definition, or one of the best definition of zuhd, comes from Abu Sulaiman al-Darani, rahimahullah. And this is on page 183. He says, az-zuhdu fi tarki ma yashghaluka anillah. Az-zuhd is for you to leave off what distracts you and takes you away from Allah Azza wa Jal. That is the most comprehensive and the best definition of zuhd. So what do I stay away from? And you will see that zuhd has categories. But what do I stay away from? Give me one sentence that helps me understand what zuhd is. It says, okay, here's the definition. This thing that you're thinking about doing, does it distract you and take you away from Allah or closer to Him? What's the answer? If you say, brings me closer to Allah, do it. If you say it is distracting and takes me away, he says, don't do it. And that is the definition. And that definition exists at the height and epitome of what zuhd is. It has levels. But it is very beneficial to have that as a scale. I'm going to go here or there, do this or that, say this or that, eat this or that, whatever it is in life. It says, what is this for Allah or brings me closer to Allah or not? If you say no and it's distracting, you leave it. And that is a definition for zuhd. Also, Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah had another definition. It's similar. الزهد المشروع هو ترك الرغبة فيما لا ينفع في الدار الآخرة. It says the legitimate zuhd is for you to leave off what does not benefit you in the akhirah. Kind of similar. So something here in the dunya that only benefits you in the dunya, yeah, you can do it if it's halal. But there is a level of zuhd where you wouldn't even do that because you say it is distracting and doesn't take me to Allah Azza wa Jal. So zuhd exists at levels. 1, 2, 3. Okay? There is zuhd that is an obligation. There's a zuhd that is haram and there's a zuhd that is recommended. So I'll share that with you. But there's also other three categories that I will share with you that come from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah. What is the zuhd that is an obligation? Zuhd in the haram. If something is haram, you have to have zuhd in it. You have to abstain from it. You have not to like it, not to want it, not to do it. You will not be able to go to Jannah without this. So that is necessary zuhd. That's the first one. You got this? Okay. What is the second one? This is the zuhd that is haram. Zuhd in things that Allah Azza wa Jal has permitted and has recommended and He loves. Right? So for instance, zuhd in marriage. You say, I don't want to get married. Because spirituality or zuhd or asceticism or mysticism or whatever means that I'm not going to get married, I'm not going to have kids, I'm not going to have a job, I don't want to pollute myself with money. Is that legitimate zuhd? He says that's forbidden. That's khilafu sunnah, opposite the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That's a misunderstanding of zuhd. And you would find that, unfortunately, entrenched in some of the books that talk about tazkiyah, that talk about spirituality. They will tell you, don't get married, don't get a job, don't go look for food, don't earn a living. And you would read it and you'd be surprised, and then you would think that maybe this is really the thing that I'm supposed to do, but I'm telling you that it isn't. Because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, beginning with Abu Bakr and ending, with any other Sahabi, they used to work for their income. And they did not just simply sit idle, trusting that Allah Azza wa Jal somehow is going to provide for them. So you cannot have zuhd in religious obligations or in marriage or in earning halal income, etc., etc. And there is a zuhd in the permissible that you do not need. This is a recommended zuhd, which tells you that you don't have to have it, but that is a step above. Meaning a halal, but it's extra, and you don't need it. So for instance, overspending on brands and vacations and food and luxury, extra. That's a zuhd, an abstaining from a halal that is recommended for us. Because that extra, in addition to the fact that it's not needed, it's distracting. The more you engage in it, the more that you'll be drawn into the dunya and away from the akhirah. So you put a barrier between you and the dunya by saying to the extra, I don't need you. And I will reserve my energy and my time and my devotion to Allah Azza wa Jal. So Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, adding to what he had said before, the legitimate zuhd is for you not to desire or not to want what is not beneficial in the akhirah. He says, وَهُوَ فُضُولُ الْمُبَاحِ الَّتِي لَا يُسْتَعَانُ بِهِ عَلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ. And it is that extra halal that does not aid you in the worship of Allah Azza wa Jal. So when it is extra and you can give it up, he says this is a legitimate recommended zuhd. So I could buy two things and that thing is very expensive, the other thing is sufficient and it does the job. It is part of recommended zuhd to be sufficient with the less rather than the more. I can go to a very fancy restaurant. He said, what's the problem with going into a fancy restaurant? It opens your appetite to the dunya. We're not telling you that it's haram. So I'm not going to put on you a burden to think tonight, oh my God, they've closed all doors in my face now, right? Even the little bit of fun that I used to have, even that I can't have. Nobody's telling you that as long as it's halal. You have to understand who you are and what you can do and your limits. Maybe today you can't. What's important is for you to know, right? Know that is a goal maybe one day for you, for me, for our children, to understand that extra that is not needed is an extra that is recommended for us not to take. Because when you enter into a fancy place, it opens your appetite for the dunya. I want more of this food and more of this scenery and more of this music and more of that interaction. So you want more and more and more of it. So your satisfaction with the dunya diminishes, meaning in a sense, you want more of it. And the less that you had at home and that modest meal that you are used to is not satisfying anymore. So you always, as a person, you have to understand the balance and understand yourself. How much of the dunya do I need? And it's not the same for everybody, by the way. How much of the dunya do I need, and how much of the dunya is actually corrupting? Even when you look at it. So there's an ayah where the Prophet, Allah Azza wa Jal tells the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, لا تمدن عينيك إلى ما متعنا به أزواجا منهم زهرة الحياة الدنيا لنفتنهم فيه ورزق ربك خير وأبقى. Don't extend your eyes and gaze at what we had favored them with and made them enjoy of the beauty of this life as a test for them, as a fitna for them. وَرِزْقُ رَبِّكَ, and the provision of Allah, your Rabb, is better and more lasting. So do you understand what he, subhanahu wa ta'ala, was telling his Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam in this ayah? Right? This is in Surah Taha. Don't extend تَمُدَّنَّ عَيْنَيْكَ, meaning to look, to stare at, to gaze at. What? What we had made them enjoy of the beauty of this life as a test for them. Meaning that if they have beautiful things, you know how sometimes you'd be walking in the street, and especially if you're someone who likes cars or fancy vehicles or modes of transportation, and you see something very expensive, what do? You stare, right? You stare and you inspect and all of this. Or you're passing by a beautiful house, that a mansion or a very big house, what do? Right? I wish I had it. Right? I wish I had it, right? And you stare and you look at it. So the more that you look, the less satisfied you would be with what you have. Right? So Allah is telling His Prophet ﷺ, protect your eyes. So why is it that you should protect your eyes? Because if you look, you'll desire. And if you desire, your heart will be preoccupied with that, even though it is halal. We haven't looked at anything haram yet. But the station of the Prophet ﷺ is such that he is telling him of the best of the best. He says, no, guard your eyes, not only from haram, but also the halal that you do not need. Because if you go past by the palaces of kings, that's the only thing that will satisfy you. And if you look at the most luxurious of brands, you will look at the bag and the shoes and the coat that you have, and you say, what is it that I have? I want that. That's true living. That's true living. Not what I'm having. I'm not living, I'm dead in the clothing of a living person. But that is true living. But I bring you here the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, page 186, when he said, إِنَّمَا الْخَيْرُ خَيْرُ الْآخِرَةِ. Indeed, goodness is the goodness of the hereafter. True goodness is the goodness of the hereafter. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said this particular statement when they were digging the trench, Ghazwatul Ahzab. And he was brought barley bread to eat with some rancid fat. Then, in addition to the exhaustion and the anxiety and fear of an approaching and impending enemy that wants to eliminate you, so tired, afraid, what do they eat? Barley, وَإِهَالَةٌ زَنِخَةٌ. Rancid, changed. That, this fat that you're eating is old. So the taste and the smell has changed. So he's eating this, alayhi salatu wassalam, and is saying what? إِنَّمَا الْخَيْرُ خَيْرُ الْآخِرَةِ. This is fine. Because the true goodness is the goodness of the hereafter. Whatever you eat is fine. But that is also a statement that all of us should remember. When we see something beautiful and our heart wants to jump at it, after it, and you say, إِنَّمَا الْخَيْرُ خَيْرُ الْآخِرَةِ. The true goodness is the goodness of the akhirah. Meaning, good living is the living of the akhirah. True life is the life of the akhirah. This doesn't last. This doesn't satisfy. This is not as good as it looks. Because when you do this, you dismiss your mind and redivert it from the dunya to the akhirah and remind it that this is nothing, don't want it. Don't get attached to it. You don't need it. There's something far more important waiting for you. Focus on the akhirah. So if you're able to pull your heart away from that and back to the akhirah, then you've won. But the dunya is always going to try to snatch you back. So look at this beautiful dress, look at this beautiful car, let's look at this beautiful house, this beautiful this. But pull your heart back by saying, إِنَّمَا الْخَيْرُ خَيْرُ الْآخِرَةِ. Now, there's also zuhd in thoughts, also I've added in the book, which is as you restrain your eyes, you also restrain your thoughts. You're thinking about the dunya, catch yourself and you say, let's think about the akhirah, meaning about palace in the dunya. You saw it. What a beautiful home. I wish I could have someone. Tell yourself, what does my house in the next life look like? Right? Is it a shabby little mud house or is it a palace? What kind of thing did I create? And can I make it better? Start imagining that house. Then start upgrading. How do you upgrade your house in Jannah? With good deeds. Right? With dhikr. It is said in one of the athar, he said that people will be building your house, people meaning the angels, will be constructing your house in Jannah as long as you're remembering Allah. When you stop, they stop. Like people work, like you have imagined now, because this is helpful to have that as an image, kind of construction angels, right? And they are building your house as long as you're giving them, you're paying them. What is the payment? Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilallah, Allahu Akbar. And you keep doing that, and the house is being built and expanded and enlarged. If you stop, they stop. So then they will ask them, why did you stop? He said, because he stopped. So the idea here is not to be trapped in the dunya thinking that the only thing I see here is the only thing that matters. Redirect yourself to the akhirah. True living is the living of the akhirah. And then work for that. Now, the second part of the hadith is where the Prophet ﷺ was asked, well, how could people love me? And he said, ﷺ, izhad fi aydin nas. He says, don't want, abstain from what they have, what they own, they will love you. Because see, it turns out that the dunya is the thing that brings less of love. When it comes to Allah and when it comes to people. You put the dunya in and you love it more, Allah loves you less, but also people love you less. Why do people love you less? Because everybody loves the dunya. And if you love what they have, they'll hate you. Like if I want what you have, won't you hate me? I want your house, I want your job, I want your car, I want this. Why? What does this come from? From my greed. So if we were competing over the same thing, and I want to be dominant, and I want to have, and there is no room for us to have the same thing, because resources in this dunya are limited, positions are limited, fame is limited. We can't all be famous. That doesn't make sense. So either I or you. So I want to be famous. We can't all be rich. That's not possible. So I or you. So it means that if I want to be better, I have to take it from you. So if I love the dunya and I want to take it from you, you will hate me for it. So the Prophet ﷺ said, it's an easy thing, not an easy thing at the same time. Don't love what they have. Don't go after their possession. They will truly love you. Everybody will truly love you. And here in page 187, in an athar, a Bedouin asked the people of Basra, he said, who is your dignitary, the best, your master, the best person among you? They say, Al-Hasan al-Basri. He says, well, how did he attain that status that he is the best, the dignitary, right? The most respected. They said, subhanAllah, they said, احتاج الناس إلى علمه واستغنى هو عن دنياهم. He says they needed his knowledge and he did not need their dunya. See, they need him, but he doesn't need them. He became the top person. Because whenever they wanted something, what would they do? And that is at a time, subhanAllah, still where people were great. That is, they needed people with knowledge. And so those people rose to the top. Anyway, so when they needed ilm, they would go to who? To him. So they always need him. Does he need them? No. He's not asking for their dunya, and he doesn't need it. Even if they offered, he would turn it down. So because of that, he grew in their eyes until he became their best. And that is the formula for a person to be the best, to refrain from needing and asking people. That as long as you don't need things from people, they will love you. But your stature, your status with someone diminishes immediately as soon as you say, can you help me? You drop. Can you help me? For most people, I'm not saying everybody, but for most people, can you help me? I need this, you drop. When you say, I don't need you, without arrogance, but satisfaction in what Allah had given to you, you say, I don't need you, I'm not going to ask, you're always great in their eyes. So as much as you can, because this is the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, as much as you can, don't ask people. And as much as you can, do things on your own. Now, of course, there are people under, that you're responsible for, right? There is a relationship between you. There is husband and wife, kids and parents. You can't say, I'm not going to ask you for anything. There are things that you need from them and things that they need from you. But we're talking about beyond that, those types of relationships, right? So, some of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, he took a covenant from them, وَأَلَّا تَسْأَلُوا النَّاسَ شَيْئًا, that you ask people for nothing. Ask people for nothing. And they understood this, radiyallahu anhum, that some of them would be on his camel and his whip would fall from him. The things that he would use kind of to redirect the camel would fall from him, and he wouldn't ask anybody to hand it back to him. Oh, please give me this back. He wouldn't ask. No, he would dismount and go get it and come back. And it's troublesome to do this on a camel. But they took that very seriously, that as long as I don't have to ask, I will not ask. So that is something beautiful from the Prophet ﷺ, that if you really want the love of people, don't fight them over their dunya. Now, the first part of the hadith, izhad fi dunya yuhibbuka Allah, abstain from the dunya and Allah will love you. This is only a part that Muslims can understand. The other part that I talked about, don't want what people have and they will love you, even non-Muslims can comprehend this. And I've just briefly referred to the book, to self-help books. Self-help books operate on a level, on an earthly level. What they're missing, no matter how great they are, their advice is always missing the other part, which is Allah Azza wa Jal and Iman. So even if they enhance your life on earth, even if they teach you to have this skill and not that skill, to get rid of this particular negative thought, replace it with a positive thought, with all of this, the best of the best that they could offer you, you're still going to come out with them missing something very big. And that thing is what? There's a gap where Allah is absent. The love of Allah is absent. The hereafter is absent. So a self-help book that does not rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always fundamentally flawed and incomplete. You need the other part that says, Allah needs to love you. You need to do things for the sake of Allah. You need to abstain from things for the sake of Allah. No self-help book that is earthly, based on human experience, will be able to help you. Okay? Last few things, inshallah, that I want to say before, again, tying what I said in the beginning, the hadith to what I said in the beginning. Notice how the companions' question was so important and so relevant, and he is thinking in a way that a lot of us do not think today. Like, how many of us today think, how can I get Allah's love? Because that's what he's asking. Tell me something that I can do so Allah would love me. How many of us are thinking like that today? Now, we may be thinking, tell me about something that I could do so people could love me on social media. How can I post and enhance my post so more people will give me likes? How can I have more friends? How I can be more popular? How can I have more admirers? That's it. We just want people to like us. And it's natural that we want love in that way. But for what aim and for what end? Is it for that to validate my own value, my own existence, my own purpose in life? I mean, if they love me, I'm good. If they hate me, I'm not. If they love me, I'm great. If not, I'm nothing. If you're basing your worth on the love of people, then you are truly misguided. You have to base it on the love of Allah Azza wa Jal, not on people's love. So even if a lot of people hate you, so what if Allah loves you? So what if you anger some people to please Allah Azza wa Jal? So what? Because Allah Azza wa Jal is the center of what you seek, as in the center and origin of all of your loves. So that's the thing that we want. First to ask the question is, what can I do so Allah would love me? Not people. That is going to come. What can I do so Allah would love me? So that would be a concern. And then to ask, what can I do so that people would love me? But follow that advice. Not compromise so that they would love you, but rather the advice of the Prophet ﷺ, love less of the dunya. And there's a hadith of the Messenger ﷺ. Here we're talking about compromises, because you always have to compromise something. So he says, من أرضى الله بسخط الناس رضي الله عنه وأرضى الناس عنه ومن أرضى الناس بسخط الله عاد حامده من الناس له داما. They're beautiful, because that tells you everything they need to know about whom to please. He says, if you please Allah despite displeasing people, Allah will be pleased with you and will make people pleased with you. That's the contradiction. You make Allah happy, but you have with that to make some people unhappy. He says Allah will be happy with you and will make people happy with you. Done. That's everything you want. Right? Why worry? Just please Allah. He'll bring people around. But he says, but if you make people happy by upsetting Allah Azza wa Jal, those who are happy with you will come to criticize you. Meaning what? The happiness that you earn by displeasing Allah will not last you. It will turn against you. Isn't that enough? It says, what do you think? You're getting their love by upsetting Allah? Wait a little bit until they hate you. Because it's not possible for love to exist on earth when Allah is angry. So you want them to love you? Please Allah while you're dealing with them. But they'll angry and they'll say this and that about me. Allah is the changer of hearts. Let them, but please Allah. Allah will take care of their hearts. Okay? So that's what it is. And by the way, that concludes our section about loving Allah Azza wa Jal. So when we go into it next week, inshallah, we'll start talking about loving the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, right? As the other second section of the book. And the last thing I want to say, remember in the beginning I said that this hadith ties directly to what is happening, right? So if you may ask how. You say in the famous hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says, تَتَدَاعَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْأُمَمُ كَمَا تَدَاعَ الْأَكَلَةُ عَلَى قَصْعَتِهَا. He says the nations will gather and invite each other kind of to attack you as people gather around the plate to eat. Right? Meaning it is that easy for them to come and attack you. And not only one, but many multitudes, all of them will come and attack you from every direction, every side. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, they said, are we few at that time, O Prophet of Allah, when that happens to us? Is it that's why we're weak? He says, no, there's a lot of you, but you are like the bubbles of the sea. غُثَاء كَغُثَاءِ السَّيْلِ. The غُثَاء is what the waves carry of bubbles and sediments and dirt, whatever. Just worthless things on top. So he says, you are like bubbles, empty, okay, of no value. Then he adds, alayhi salatu wassalam, and Allah Azza wa Jal will take the fear that your enemies have for you. They used to be afraid of you. Will take away the fear that they had and will put weakness in your hearts. They said, this is al-wahn. He will put wahn in your hearts, weakness. They said, O Messenger of Allah, what is this weakness? He says, love of the dunya and hating death. You see how it ties to what we're talking about here? What is this weakness that is making us all like bubbles that don't matter? He says, you're weak here. Not weak physically in body, but weak here. What is that weakness? He says, you love the dunya and you hate death. So you love the dunya so much that you hate death, and you hate death so much that your enemies don't fear you anymore. So they will come and occupy you and kill you and take your children and expel you and all of this. But how do you treat this? You have to love the dunya less and love Allah Azza wa Jal more. Because if you do this on the inside, you'll be strong and you are willing to sacrifice and you're willing to die if Allah wants you to die, then you matter. And if you're pleasing to Allah Azza wa Jal, then Allah's victory descends because you are worthy of it. If not, then Allah will leave you to your own devices, to your own plots, to your own effort. You want to succeed? Do what everybody else is doing to succeed. And maybe you will win and maybe you won't. But if you say, I want Allah's help, that's very different. If you say, I want just human help, go ahead. Do whatever humans are doing. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But if you say, no, I want Allah's help. I want to be among the elect few who will receive that divine help from Allah Azza wa Jal, then that divine help means that you would be on the inside divinely connected. So you must love Allah more than the dunya. So that's why how that hadith ties to it. And that is something that all of us can work on. So love the dunya less, work for the dunya less, do for Allah more, work for the hereafter more. Teach that to yourself, to people around you, to your children. And then when we change, things change. Right? So I'll stop here, inshallah Rabbil Alameen. And let me know if you have questions. I'll be happy to answer them, inshallah. Let me check if you have online. Okay, so we do have online questions. So the first question is, it's hard for a working person to pray 5 salat with jama'ah in the masjid. Out of the 5 salat, which one has more weight to pray in the masjid and how often? I mean, how often is how often you can. How often depends on how often you can. So do of that as much as you can in praying in the masjid. But if you're telling which one carries more weight, it also depends on your schedule. But if you can, Isha and Fajr. If you can, Isha and Fajr. And typically, for the schedule of someone working, Isha and Fajr are the easiest. So if you manage, Isha and Fajr, inshallah. Right? How about a wife needing to ask husband, as the husband provides for the family and the husband is not proactive giving the rights of the wife and children? Should this be avoided by the wife too? No. If you're asking for your rights as a wife or asking for your rights as a husband, you're permitted to do this. It's not part of the disliked question. So what we're talking about, not these types of relationship. So it's not like as a parent, I shouldn't ask my kids for things. No, you need to do because you need to discipline and you need to train and you need to guide. So you ask them to do things, right? And they need things from you. And if you employ people, you need to ask them for things. You can't say, I'm shy or I'm not going to ask them, so you'll be doing everything yourself. No, that's not right. But beyond these types of relationships, right? When you don't need, then not. But your question, your rights, you ask for them. Give me this, the kids need that, please take care of this, you ask, inshallah. Okay. So, can you give us practical steps that we can start doing so we can earn Allah's love? The thing is that everything that we have said, right? And by the way, we're not done. When I said we concluded that section, it does not mean that we stopped talking about how to earn Allah's love. It's going to continue. But the hadiths were grouped in that way for focus. So here's this focus, here is that focus, but we haven't really stopped talking about how to earn Allah's love. So we're going to keep, inshallah, talking about it. So maybe towards the end, we can come up, inshallah, with a summary of everything that we talked about. Jazakumullah khair for that. So in that way, it is easier to remember and refer back to. So inshallah, I could work on that, inshallah, but that should be towards the end, inshallah. Because now it's going to be redundant. Things that we just said and things that we will say again, inshallah. Let me just make sure that there's no one here physically present. Okay, I see you, and I'll come to you, inshallah. I see your hand. Okay. How to ask a father to pay more attention to family versus friends. How to ask? I guess there's no other way except being very direct and say, your family needs you more than your friends do. And I know for some, just because it's, habitual or it's easier, right, to be outside rather than inside, right, for some men. And some women too, maybe, right? Easier to be with friends rather than with family because you don't want it like the noise and you don't want the responsibility. But if you're just outside running away from all of it, be assured that you're going to pay a price for this later on. If you're neglecting your kids and you're not right next to them, teaching them, who else will be doing this except you? So who's the model? Who's the role model? Who's the educator? Who is the friend? So if you're absent and there is a gap and you just give them the tablet or the phone, good luck, once they're teenagers, good luck on what they're going to become and then beyond. So no, your station is at home. As a father, you're supposed to be home. You're supposed to be teaching. And yes, give some time to yourself so you are with your friends because you need that release. It's necessary, but not to the extent where you're neglecting your family. So if this is what the sister meant, this is a call for all fathers. Once you've decided to have a son or a daughter, you're bound to this. And you have to take care of them as the mother is taking care of them. It's not just her job. You need to be present and you need to be physically there and you need to ask questions and see how they're doing their homework and what they're doing at school and what they're going through. You have to be 100% involved because your absence is going to be dangerous. So how to ask him? You tell him all of this or you have him listen to this lecture, right? I don't know, maybe that's a way. But it's absolutely essential, right? Absolutely essential. I'm having a hard time balancing memorizing and learning tafsir. Any advice for a mother with small children who is having a hard time with Quran memorization? Now, you can decide to do one and not the other. So you could do tafsir. So just focus on memorization. If it's hard for you to do both, you could just enroll in a plan because you need somebody always kind of an instructor or a guide. So if you have that, and if not, try to find someone or at least someone more experienced, if not an instructor. But if you can find someone, then that's perfect. And focus on memorization if two of them are difficult. And finish your memorization and then go to your tafsir, right? So if the balance is hard, choose one, right? So do memorization if memorization is easier, right? If not, if it's the other one, you could do tafsir. Just seek the instructor. I think that will make it much, much easier because you have schedule and follow-up. And someone will organize the things for you, inshallah. If a person knows that something takes them away from Allah, for example, business proposal, can they let it go for the time being and work on their iman and then come back to it when their attachment is gone? That's always a judgment call that you're going to be making, right? There are things in life that always will demand your attention, always. There will always, your input here, your judgment, your consultation will decide whether this is something that I should leave or something that I can't. And you can pray istikhara about the issue. Should I do this or favor Allah Azza wa Jal, or favor more attention to Islam or Quran or tafsir? Which one? So sometimes that would be the right move, and sometimes it's not the right move. From afar, from outside, it's hard to judge. Because we don't know. We don't know what entails your responsibilities, what comes after this, how much time are you taken away from A and given to B. It's really hard to judge. But pray istikhara and ask people around you who know you very well and can have access to more detail. And then they'll be able to tell you, yeah, you don't need so much of this. Focus on your iman, right? More of that. Or no, you know what? This is a necessity as well. And what you think is your focus on iman is maybe a heightened hypersensitivity to something that is not necessary at this moment. So you need a more in-depth advice and analysis, right? So seek that, inshallah, and also pray istikhara as well. So I think I've covered everything online. Okay, so before we adjourn, anybody here has a question? You had a question, right? Yeah. What's your question? You could ask from there if you want. You could scream your... Yeah, you can ask from there. I couldn't hear him. Now come closer, come closer. It's okay, come closer. Then I could hear you. Wait. Wait till you're close, come. If you don't want it, kind of speak louder. Yeah, you can come here if you want. Yeah. Oh, okay. So if he's working as a policeman and he doesn't have to pray, is that okay? Okay. So, okay, inshallah. So you get to be a policeman, inshallah, and then we'll find the best answer for you. Okay?
Should I give up or just continue?
So if you're working hard to build a big house, then what?
If it doesn't work, should I give up or continue?
Okay, so if he's working really hard to build a big house and it doesn't work out, does he have to give up or continue? I'd say ask the architect and the construction company, but if you can't continue until you finish it. Right? Continue. Okay, good. طيب. خير إن شاء الله. So we're stopping إن شاء الله. جزاكم الله خير. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والحمد لله رب العالمين.